what are the big takeaways in your playing that you think you took away from SRV?
I don't know, Scuttle Button or one of those songs. At the time, it took me on a path of like, I need to take music and guitar seriously now. You hear someone do the it's like, oh, Stevie Lick.
Yeah.
But it's not what he was playing as much, sounds generic, but it was how he was playing.
Today's episode is sponsored by Gator Cases. Guitarists, like any other musician, value the advantages of proper protection for their gear. Guitars, amps, effects, and accessories all need safe transport and storage. Luckily, Gator's got you covered. You mentioned this, I think, in an interview with Greg Koch, that when you were a kid, you were trying to learn Stevie Ray Vaughan, and you learned kind of the fundamentals from a Greg Koch instructional video.
Yeah.
What do you remember what that video was like, or like where is the SRV influence in your playing? Like, what do you think about?
Well, I mean, I like just everybody else. I think the first time they heard Stevie Ray Vaughan, if you were like 16 or 17, you were like, or at any age really, but that's just the age I was at. It came from just finally, I don't know, Scuttle Button or one of those songs. And it just, at the time, it took me on a path of like, I need to take music and guitar seriously now. I thought I was good, but I'm nothing. I have just been playing songs I like. I've been jamming with my friends. That inspired me to put my head down, put in the time, put in the practice, the 10,000 hours, all that shit. But once I was kind of getting into it, I think I would have been at like a record store at the time. Yes, a record store. HMV in Canada, maybe it was, or maybe it was even a Walmart, and I just saw this SRV licks video, which I was like, oh, sweet. That's like, this is before YouTube was like what it is now. Now you can just Google like literally anything you want to learn, and not only is what you're looking for going to be there, but there's too much of it. You can't even decide. So I bought this DVD or whatever, and it was Greg. And he's exactly how he is now, just like over eccentric and hilarious. And it was awesome. He's like nailing all this stuff. So I had to tell him that. I mean, Greg's a friend now. We've known each other for years and years, but I remember when we did that pod, probably was like 3 years ago or something. But yeah, so funny. I love stuff like that. That's like the full circle, beautiful things in life, you know?
What were the big takeaways though from that video, or from SRV? Like, what are the big takeaways in your playing that you think you took away from SRV?
I think just the focus on his dynamics and the feel, and like there's a time to be really aggressive, there's a time to be really soft and delicate. It's not so much about the notes. Like, he's got iconic licks that you hear someone do the it's like, oh, Stevie Lick.
Yeah.
But it's not what he was playing as much, sounds generic because I feel like I say this all the time, but it was how he was playing that really spoke to me. And it was just the little nuances with the volume knob and the dynamics and the feel and the aggression and obviously his sound. Everyone wants his sound. But I never wanted to like just be a Stevie clone. I'm not. That's not what I do. It's not, even if I tried, I couldn't, but there's an aura around him. I think a huge part of it is that we didn't really get, right when he got into his prime, unfortunately it ended. I can't even imagine if he was around today still, the kind of stuff he'd be doing and how that would have even inspired and changed all of us guitar players going forward. But I think just that general aura is what spoke to me and every other guitar player that's been inspired by him. It wasn't so much like that video of licks. I mean, I probably saw that a year after already being into Stevie, and it was just kind of like a bonus thing, like, oh, that's sweet. And it's like on sale for $4. Like, why don't I just buy this, learn a few more licks? Why not? But that's generally, I'd say, and with most of my favorite musicians, there's elements like, sometimes it's their phrasing or it's their sense of melody and their choices, but the things that really speak to me the most about all musicians, all instruments, is the nuance. It's like how they're doing it rather than what they're doing. And it's usually feel and dynamics and like the things that you don't really see on paper, you know?
How do you practice those things to incorporate them into your own playing? Do you just listen back to yourself a lot on gigs and try to make micro adjustments, or how do you try to capture that energy?
That is a great way. I did that from the very beginning. I would record myself practicing. I would record every gig I did. And it was a matter of getting things to sound like they do in your head when you're playing. So like, when you play something and you're like, I think this is great. It's sounding like how I think it is. And then you listen back and it's like, oof, it's not.
What is that? Why are we so bad at knowing how we actually sound? Like so many gigs, and then sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes you think you sound like crap, and you listen back and you go,
great.
"Oh, that's fucking amazing!" Like I never know how I sound on the gig.
That's what I was.
I listen back.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that. I think it's just experience. It's like, you go to a party and you look in a mirror, like you went to dinner right before the party, and you look at, and you're like, oh shit, I got some lettuce in my tooth there. I'm glad I was just kind of self-aware and noticed that. And it's a matter of training yourself to, first of all, be relaxed and comfortable, and like, you don't want to think about this, of course, when you're playing, but after you do it enough times, it's a matter of just being so content with what you're doing that it doesn't, something that feels bad when you listen back actually did feel bad, or vice versa. Like, even like at the highest level, you're still going to have days where you thought you had a nice gig and you listen and you're like, ugh. Or vice versa. You're like, this is great. And you listen, it's like, this is horrible. But documenting yourself helped me a lot and still does. And honestly, experience. Like, if you can get on stage hundreds and thousands of times, there is no substitute for that. Like, you can sit at home and play and practice all day, but if you don't actually do what you're practicing in context to like actual music and like a song, whether or not it's with people, it's really hard to get into that, because there's a difference between practice and playing. You know what I mean? So I think once I felt like I spent enough time, which there's never enough time, working on fundamental things only for a while. You should still always do that, and so should I. I tried to turn my practice into playing, so that everything I was practicing was in context of playing with a band, context of playing specific songs, being in this scenario, so that when I got up on stage, and I'm fortunate because I started gigging when I was like 14. I started like very early playing on stage with people that were older than me too, kind of giving me like a nudge, like, hey, you rush a lot. You should you should watch out for that. Or like, don't put so many notes in your chord. You don't need to like, okay. Like, I was getting a lot of good intel right away, which I'm so grateful for. But I just started building that awareness. And I'm not saying I figured it out. There's still a lot of work to do. I'm always kind of working on it. But as much as you can make your practice feel like really playing, then it's going to be a lot easier when you're in that situation.